Hello everyone, this is Almera D. Mabang together with Wanday M. Landasan, and we are assigned to discuss the teacher as an effective stress manager. Heraclitus once said that the only constant is change. As the 21st century is ushered in, to say that there have been changes in the academe would be an understatement. From the implementation of various programs and policies, ranging from the use of Grant Wiggins and J. McTighe's Understanding by Design curriculum framework to the mother tongue-based multilingual education, and now to the K-12 basic education, the educational landscape has changed tremendously. In the forefront of these changes, we find the teachers. More often than not, teachers find adapting to these changes a challenge since this is something that has to be addressed on top of their daily task in the classroom. Every day, teachers have to deal with demands from the administration, parents, and students on top of the classes they have to prepare and the papers they have to check. The entire teaching force could be unanimous in saying that 8 hours in the school simply cannot suffice to address the workload they are facing. Burning out is a daily temptation, especially for beginning teachers who find themselves fumbling in the dark. For those who have stayed long enough in the profession to get through this survival stage of teaching, the way to get through the school year's load could mean sacrificing time for oneself, friends, and family. All of this results to a lot of stress. Now, what is stress? How does it affect people? In what ways can teachers be better equipped to handle stress in the workplace? These are the questions that this section seeks to address. Stress can mean differently to people. For the purpose of our discussion, we define stress as a normal, physical response to events that make you feel threatened or upset your balance in some way. When you sense danger, whether it's real or imagined, the body's defenses kick into high gear in a rapid, automatic process known as the fight or flight reaction or the stress response, according to Smith, Segal, and Segal, last updated December 2011. It should be noted that stress does not always seem bad. It can come in the form of being chosen to represent the school in a contest, getting your bedroom renovated, or having your closest friends stay in your house for an entire week. All of these events denote stress since they tend to upset your senses of peace or balance. Therefore, we can say that stress can be caused by good things happening to you as well. The common causes of stress include arguments, disagreements, conflicts, illnesses, pushing your body too hard, changing weather conditions, pollution, tobacco use, puberty, taking responsibility for another's actions, and lack of basic needs. For female teachers, pre- and post-menstrual syndrome, pregnancy, and postpartum become stressors. What people need to remember, teachers most specifically, is that what causes us to be stressed is our reaction to our environment. Although what happens around us will inevitably affect us, Stephen Covey highlights in his 90-10 principle that 10% of life is made up of what happens to you, and 90% of life is decided by how you react. There are two very different types of stress that we experience. One type of stress is positive or eustress, and another is negative or distress. By this, we can imply that many people carry enormous stress loads without even realizing it. Laura Schenck, 2011, espouses that eustress improves performance, motivates, and focuses energy and energizing, while distress, on the other hand, are demotivating and displaces energy, causes anxiety, worry, or concern, and decreases overall performance or abilities. It is important to note that people do not experience the same effects. Csikszentmihalyi supports this idea when she said that it is how people respond to stress that determines whether they will profit from misfortune or be miserable. Human beings, being granted with choices and free will, can react differently to the varying stimuli from the environment that brings about that feeling of being stressed or what we call as stressors. Now let us proceed to the principles of stress management. Awareness about all of these things enable teachers to make better choices to help alleviate stress in their lives. Wayne Froggatt, consultant director of the Center for Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, have come up with the 12 rational principles that will help achieve success at stress management. Number 1 is self-knowledge. Self-knowledge appears as the first principle because most of the others build on it. It involves knowing your capabilities and your limits, your personal temperament and typical coping style, and your values and goals. Number 2 is self-acceptance and confidence. Self-acceptance and confidence are closely related concepts. One builds on the other. Being able to accept yourself as you are, free of any demand that you be different, provides a basis for confidence in your abilities. Confidence, in turn, will enable you to take risks, try new things, and direct your own life. Number 3 is enlightened self-interest. The ability to act in your own interest follows on from self-acceptance and confidence. As we shall see, it is also important to take into account the interest of others. The principle of enlightened self-interest takes into account both parts. You place your own interest first, and you keep in mind that your own interest will be best served if you take into account the interest of others. Number 4, tolerance for frustration and discomfort. The ability to tolerate frustration and discomfort is central to stress management. High tolerance will keep you from overreacting to things you dislike. It will help you tackle problems and issues rather than avoid them. It will enable you to take risks and try new experiences. Number 5 is long-range enjoyment. Like most people, you probably want to enjoy life. As well as avoid distress, you want to experience pleasure. You probably want to get your pleasure now, not tomorrow. As Alice said in Through the Looking Glass, it must come sometimes to jam today, but there are times when it is in our interest to forego immediate pleasure in order to have greater enjoyment in the longer term. Number 6 is risk-taking. Human beings by nature seek safety, predictability, and freedom from fear, but humans also pursue risk. A totally secure life would be a boring one. To grow as a person and improve your quality of life means being prepared to take some chances. What we are talking about is a willingness to take sensible risk in order to get more out of life and avoid the distress of boredom, listlessness, and dissatisfaction. Number 7 is moderation. Sensible risk-taking recognizes the innate human desire for safety and security. The principle of moderation will help you avoid extremes in thinking, feeling, and behaving. Now, why is moderation important to stress management? Extreme expectations, too high or too low, will set you up for either constant failure or a life of boredom. Addictive or obsessional behavior can take control of you, creating new distress.
Number 8, emotional and behavioral responsibility. People who see their emotions and behaviors as under their control are less prone to distress than people who see themselves as controlled by external forces. The principle of responsibility can help you take charge of your emotions, your actions, and in turn your life. It involves taking responsibility for what you feel and how you act.
Number 9 is self-direction and commitment. Emotional and behavioral responsibility lay the basis for taking control over your life and committing yourself to action and involvement.
Number 10. Flexibility. Flexible people can bend with the storm rather than be broken by it. They know how to adapt and adjust to new circumstances that call for new ways of thinking and behaving. They have resilience, the ability to bounce back from adversity. Number 11. Objective thinking. Flexibility and openness, as well as the other principles, require freedom from ways of thinking that are narrow-minded, sectarian, bigoted, and fanatical, or that rely on uncritical acceptance of dogmatic beliefs or magical explanation for the world and what happens in it.
And lastly, the acceptance of reality. It makes sense wherever possible to change things you dislike, but there will be some things you will not be able to change. You then have two choices. You rail against fate and stay distressed, or you can accept reality and move on. To accept something is to acknowledge that it exists, believe there is no reason it should not exist, and see it as bearable.
So all of these principles highlight different perspectives that strengthen belief that each person has the capacity to encounter stress but not enough overcome with it. No person becomes a master manager overnight. It will take many experiences and a lot of mistakes along the way before one can truly become better at coping with stress.
Now that we have established the power of free will in the management of stress, we should start making choices with greater confidence. We can start in managing one of our most important resources, our time. Stephen Covey in his book First Things First shares his idea for effective time management. He starts with a straightforward idea: put the first things first. Pause and ask yourself, what is important to me? Note on your mind your top 3 choices. It can range from your family, studies, work, friends to leisure, etc. Now, examine your everyday routine. Do the things that you are doing reflect the values that you have set out for yourself? This is the cause of stress. Many people feel that they continue to do a lot and yet end up accomplishing nothing. This can be due to the fact that what they are doing is not really what is important, but what seems to be important at the moment. These are urgent matters, and not all urgent matters are important. Now, Covey devised a time management matrix shown here. Quadrant 1 is the quadrant of necessity, urgent and important. These are the things that you have to address right away. Writing a to-do list every day is very helpful at attending to these things. Quadrant 2 is the quadrant of quality and personal leadership, non-urgent and important. These are the things that have to be done even if they are not urgent, simply because they are important to your goals. These include items that don't really act on you but are things that you have to act upon. This may include what small steps you can take to achieve long-term goals. Quadrant 3 is the quadrant of deception, urgent and non-important. Activities that are urgent seem to be important, but what we have to stop and think whether they are worth doing at all. If you seem to lack time for doing important things, reallocate time from activities that fall in quadrant 3 and 4, because those in quadrant 4 are not worth doing at all. Now, to facilitate time management decisions, ask yourself the following questions. What is most important to you? What gives your life meaning? What roles do you play? Which of them would you like to play well? Always remember to keep the first things first. As a future teacher, look into your goals and manage your resources to keep stress at bay and make sure your time is well spent. What we need to remember in stress management is that stress is inevitable but manageable. Management of stress begins in making the right decisions. We make enlightened decisions when we anchor them on our goals, values, and principles of stress management. And lastly, we can manage stress if we manage our time wisely. That would be all. Thank you.